Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night with the strange feeling that someone is watching you? You look around the room, everything's quiet, everything's still, but that feeling just won't go away, like there's someone or something just standing there, silently staring. Back home, where I grew up, those feelings aren't brushed off. They're signs, and they're taken seriously, especially if you live near an old mango tree. Like the one behind Uncle Two's house. Uncle Two's lived alone ever since his wife passed. His house is small, old, with rusted tin roofing and wooden walls that creak even when there's no wind. It's right beside a quiet little canal, and behind it, looming and wide, is that ancient mango tree. Its branches stretch like arms across the backyard, thick and tangled, leaves dark as dusk. The kind of tree that looks like it remembers things you'd rather forget. For years, folks in the village whispered stories about that tree. They said a woman stands beneath it every night. Some say she's waiting for someone. Some say she's not waiting anymore, she's searching. When I was young, I used to laugh at those tales. Just village gossip, I thought, until I stayed over at Uncle Two's one rainy season. It was after a family gathering. I remember the night clearly. It was still, the kind of stillness that presses on your ears. Around 3 in the morning, I got up to get some water. The moonlight was dim, barely enough to see past the window, but something pulled me toward the back door. I opened it slowly, stepped out under the creaking eaves, and looked toward the mango tree. And that's when I saw her, a woman, just standing there beneath the tree. She wasn't moving. Her hair was long and loose, falling past her waist. She wore a white blouse, maybe an old-fashioned. But just like the women used to wear in the countryside. Her arms hung at her sides, and though she didn't look at me, I felt like she knew I was there. I should have run or called someone, but I didn't. I just stood there, frozen, watching her. My hand was shaking as I clicked on my flashlight, and the second the beam hit the tree, she vanished. Gone. No sound, no trace. Just the mango tree, looming and quiet as ever, its bark rough and knotted like an old man's face. The next morning, I told Uncle Two. I expected him to laugh it off, but he just gave a long sigh, like he already knew. "You're not the first," he said. "Since your aunt passed, she's been there. I don't know who she is, but she comes at night, and sometimes." He paused, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sometimes I hear her call my name." I felt a chill run down my spine. Uncle Two wasn't the type to scare easy. He'd served in the military, seen all sorts of things. But the way he said that, it wasn't fear. It was something deeper, something like sorrow or guilt. Over the next few days, I started asking around, quietly, of course. I didn't want to stir up any old fears, but I learned something strange. Anyone who stayed overnight at Uncle Two's house claimed to have seen the same woman, always at night, always under the mango tree. Some said she looked sad, others said she cried. A few even claimed to hear her sobbing softly, like the wind rustling through dry leaves. But come morning, there was nothing. No footprints, no damp patches where tears had supposedly fallen. Nothing to prove she'd ever been there. Just stories. Curious, I went to see old Granny Bay, the village midwife. She delivered more babies than anyone could count and was known to have one foot in this world and one in the next. She told me a story that chilled me more than anything I'd heard before. Years ago, she said, a woman used to stand under that mango tree waiting for her husband. He'd gone off to war and never came back, but she waited. Rain or shine, she stood there every evening. People said she talked to the tree, asked it to bring him home. And then one day, she vanished. They found a piece of rope hanging from a branch, but no body. I asked, did they bury her? Granny Bay shook her head slowly. There was no body to bury, only that rope. She just disappeared. Since then, strange things happened near that tree, especially at night. As she finished, a wind swept through the bamboo beside her house, and a black cat darted across the yard, letting out a screech that sounded almost like a cry. We both turned to look, but the cat had vanished. Granny Bay leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. Be careful asking too much. Some spirits don't like being remembered. Since then, I can't look at mango trees the same way. Especially not old ones, the kind that stand like sentinels, holding on to stories the world forgot. I never stayed overnight at Uncle Two's again, but I kept wondering, who was she really? And why did she only appear to outsiders, never to Uncle Two himself? Maybe it was grief or something older, something buried deep in the roots of that tree. But one thing was certain, she was still there, waiting. I wish I could tell you the story ended there, that it was just a strange night and a collection of old village tales. But the truth is, things got worse after that, not right away. The kind of worse that creeps in slowly, like a bad smell you can't quite place until it's everywhere. A few months later, I got a call from my cousin. Uncle Two had taken a fall near the canal behind his house. He was all right, thank goodness, but he'd broken a few ribs and had to stay at the district hospital for a week. They needed someone to stay in the house and keep an eye on things, and guess who they asked? I didn't say yes right away. Something in me hesitated. But it's family, you know? And I told myself, whatever I saw that night, it was just shadows and a tired mind. I packed a small bag, grabbed a flashlight, and headed back to the house with its leaning porch and crooked windows. The place hadn't changed, still quiet, still lonely, and the mango tree. It still stood there, branches drooping like they were heavy with secrets. I avoided looking at it as I unlocked the door. That first night, I tried to settle in. I made some tea, turned on the old transistor radio, and tried to pretend I wasn't listening for footsteps that weren't mine. But around midnight, the air started to shift. You know that feeling when the wind changes and everything just stops moving? The kind of silence that makes your ears ring? I heard something outside, not footsteps, not exactly. More like dragging, something soft brushing against the ground, slowly, back and forth, like cloth. I froze. I knew exactly where the sound was coming from, behind the house, right beneath the mango tree. I don't know what made me move, but I grabbed the flashlight and edged toward the back door. My fingers trembled as I reached for the latch, heart pounding so loud I thought it might burst through my chest. I opened it. There was no one there. The moon was behind clouds, casting the whole yard in a kind of silver shadow. But then I saw it, a piece of white cloth hanging from one of the lower branches. It swayed gently in. The breeze, torn at the edge like someone had grabbed it in a panic. I stepped closer and realized it wasn't just cloth. It was part of an old blouse, the kind women wore decades ago, white, thin, and almost translucent in the moonlight. I reached out to touch it, and then I heard a voice, low, raspy, barely audible, too. It came from the tree, not behind it, not around it, from it, too. I dropped the flashlight. That voice didn't sound angry. It sounded lost. Like someone searching in the dark, calling out without hope of being heard. But I'd heard her, and that terrified me more than anything else. I ran back inside and slammed the door, locking every bolt I could find. I sat against the wall with my hands over my ears, as if that could keep her voice out. But I didn't hear her again that night. In the morning, I went back outside. The cloth was gone. The tree stood as it always did, still, silent, and somehow even heavier with what it wouldn't say. Later that day, I found an old box in Uncle 2's room while searching for some documents his doctor needed. Inside were photos faded and yellowing, and one in particular that caught my eye. It was of a young woman standing beneath the mango tree, smiling, her hand resting on Uncle 2's shoulder. She wasn't his wife. His wife was thinner, quieter, and in all her photos, she wore glasses. But this woman, she looked familiar. Not in a way I could place, but in a way that made my stomach twist. I turned the photo over, written in careful handwriting, Lynn TT 1969, Lynn. The name sat in my mind like a stone in water. I hadn't heard it before, not in family stories, not in old letters. I showed the photo to my aunt, who now lived in the next village over. Her face turned pale when she saw it. Lynn, she said softly. She was the girl your uncle was going to marry before the war. She waited for him, but he didn't come back in time. When he finally did, she was already gone? I asked. Gone where? She didn't answer at first. Then, in a whisper, they never found her. I don't know what Uncle 2 felt when he came back to that house after all those years, with a different wife and a new life, maybe guilt, maybe sadness. But maybe, just maybe, that old mango tree remembered. Maybe she never left. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak, every sigh of the wind outside made me jump. At around 2 in the morning, I heard the dragging sound again. I didn't look. I couldn't. But I felt her presence, not angry, not vengeful, just waiting. The next morning, I called the hospital and told them I couldn't stay another night. I packed my things and left. And as I drove away, I looked back one last time at the house, at the tree, at the branch that reached farthest toward the canal, and I saw her, clear as day, standing beneath the tree, watching, not me, but something behind me. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I just pressed harder on the gas and drove until the village was far behind me, until the tree was a memory hiding in the rearview mirror. But even now, years later, I still wonder what was she looking at. It's strange, the way time plays tricks on you. Life moves on, you go back to work, you run errands. People ask how your uncle is doing and you smile politely and say he's stable. You avoid talking about the tree or the cloth or the voice, but it follows you, quietly. Not in the way nightmares do, with fear and violence, but like a soft presence that never fully leaves. A few weeks after I returned home, Uncle 2 passed away. Peacefully, they said, in his sleep. The doctor said his heart just gave out. He was old after all. No one was surprised, but I couldn't help but wonder. Did he see her again in those final hours? Did she come for him? At the funeral, I stayed quiet. I watched as they lowered his body into the ground, right next to Aunt Heen's grave. But something gnawed at me. A small detail, something my aunt said that day I showed her the photo. They never found her. What did that mean, exactly? I went back to the village a few weeks later. Told myself it was to help clean up the house, maybe sell it, maybe rent it out. But really, I needed answers. I needed to know what happened to Lynn. I walked around the property during the day this time. Sunlight filtered through the mango leaves, casting dancing shadows on the ground. The tree seemed less menacing, almost gentle. I circled it slowly, looking at the roots, the trunk, the place where I'd once seen the cloth hanging, and that's when I noticed something strange. A spot behind the tree where the grass didn't grow right. It looked sunken. Like the earth had settled there, just a little too much. The villagers say the land there is soft, that the canals sometimes shift the soil. But something told me it wasn't the canal. I knelt down and touched the ground. It was firm but uneven, like something beneath it was trying to breathe. I didn't dig. I wasn't brave enough. But I marked the spot in my mind and walked back inside the house. In the old drawer of Uncle Two's desk, I found a letter unfinished, unsent. The date was from years ago. It started with Lynn and ended with only a few lines. I'm sorry I didn't come back in time. I never stopped thinking about you. The war took more than years it took you, and I carry that weight every day. I hope you find peace. I hope one day you'll forgive me. It wasn't addressed to anyone. No envelope, no stamp, just folded and forgotten. I sat with it for a long time, the silence of the house pressing in like fog. That night, I slept on the couch, too tired to be afraid, and somewhere in the middle of the night, I dreamed. Or maybe it wasn't a dream. I was standing outside again, under the mango tree. The air was warm, thick with the scent of ripe fruit and something else, old perfume, the kind our mothers wore when they were young. In the dream, she stood in front of me, not ghostly, not terrifying, just present. Her eyes were dark and deep. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. I understood. She had waited, not for revenge, not for answers, just for acknowledgement, for someone to say her name aloud again, for someone to remember she was once real, once loved, once full of laughter under that same mango tree. When I woke, my pillow was damp, though I couldn't tell if it was from sweat or tears. I left the village for good. The next day, sold the house to a distant cousin who never believed in ghosts and only cared that the roof didn't leak. I didn't argue. I just handed over the keys and wished him well. But I kept the letter. It's in a box with old family photos now. And sometimes on quiet nights, I pull it out and reread those few lines. I've never seen her again. Not in dreams, not in passing shadows, but every so often I smell that perfume. That gentle floral scent carried on the wind, nowhere near any flower. And I know she's still out there, not haunting, not hurting, just watching.